Hey guys, and welcome to another Sonically Sound video. Today, we're going to look at how to mix drums, specifically in this video, the hi-hat. This is just a simple way on how to mix drums, my go-to guide if you will. This isn't the only way to mix a hi-hat, this is just the way I do it, and hopefully this will help you mix your hi-hat. In this video, I'll be using Logic Pro 10 version 10.4.4. So if something doesn't look right to you at your setup at home, you might need to update. So in a typical setup, a hi-hat isn't mic'd, but for the purposes of this video, we're looking at miking all the drums up, as sometimes you may want to do that, as it will give you clarity over all the instruments in the drum set. So the first thing I want to do is find a bit where the hi-hat is playing a lot, and then solo it and loop that section. So that sounds like quite a good section where the hi-hat is playing a lot. Now if you've watched my other videos on how to mix things, you'll know that my first thing to do is compression. Now the exception to this is stuff like hi-hats and cymbals. This is because hi-hats and cymbals have quite a large dynamic range, and that's good. Whereas with a snare, you might want less dynamic range as it needs to be punchy and loud. But with cymbals, they are very delicate, so lightly being hit is very different to being loudly hit, and we want to make that difference obvious. So we don't want to reduce the dynamic range, so I'm very likely to just leave the compression alone on the hi-hat, otherwise that might ruin the quality. So the second step would be EQ. So you hit the EQ box here. If you haven't watched the EQ video I've made, I recommend you hit that first so that we can talk about this and it makes sense to you. So when it comes to EQing a hi-hat, you want to think about what frequencies you want to hear. Obviously, the high range is very prominent, and we want to maybe boost that a bit. So we'll be using a high shelf on that. We'll probably maybe boost some of this low end, because although the cymbals are high end, there will be a bit of low range that we might like, but equally we want to hear it and see if we want to reduce it or boost it. When it comes to cymbals, because there's so much high range going on, I might want to use a low cut to remove some of the low frequencies. I won't go too crazy with it, as there is still some cymbal sound kind of towards 500 Hertz, but I'll probably just put this at, say, 176 Hertz is probably fine. There's not going to be much playing from the cymbals at that frequency. I could go higher, but I'm just going to leave it there for now. So let's have a listen and see what frequencies we want to remove or boost. So what I did there is I boosted the high range with the high shelf, as that's most of the sound we want to hear. You'll notice I boost some of the low range because actually the cymbals are making quite a nice sound there, and it's just kind of giving the sound a bit more body rather than just constant like shh sound. And then I've actually reduced around 1K. Now I heard a sound that was maybe a bit undesired, but it probably wasn't that bad. I might not keep it there, but it's just a matter of an opinion. I think it sounds quite nice without that bit, but just be sure to always kind of hear it with and without and test it and see what you think. So that's the EQ done. The next thing you might want to look at is panning. Now when it comes to panning drums, you want to think about what orientation you want the drums to be set up as. When panning, it gives the audience an idea of where all the drums are. So the most popular perspectives are audience perspective or drummer perspective. Audience perspective is us looking at the drum kit like as if we're at a concert. So for that, you want to think, where is the hi-hat? It's just off where the snare is, so you want it to be to the right of you. Around plus 30 is probably right, because if you watch my snare video, we did plus 15, plus 20 for the snare. So it's just off of that, so you want maybe 30, maybe a bit less, maybe like 25. That's kind of what you want, and people will then definitely hear that it's coming from over there. If you want it to be the other perspective, which is drummer perspective, then you want it to be minus 30, as it will be all the way on the left side. Now if you've got headphones on, it might be very clear that it's coming out of one side. If you're just using laptop speaker or something like that, it may sound a bit different. So once the panning's done, there's only one thing left to do, and that is reverb. If you haven't watched my video on reverb, I recommend you do that so this makes sense. If you have, then you'll know that I will use a send and send it to an auxiliary where there is a reverb already set up. I've already got my drums going to that reverb, and so now I want to add hi-hat to it. I want all the drums to go into one reverb because I want it to sound like the drums were all in one room. It could be like as if it's a concert room, or it could be just a large recording room with lots of reverb. So what we want to do is we want to hit play and then slowly bring in the hi-hat and see where it kind of sits and if we want more or less of it. So you can see there I've brought it quite high up, but that is also because the actual signal of the hi-hat itself is quite low. So I'm having to bring it up quite a bit. I might bring it up a bit more because it's creating a lot of presence to the sound that we're already hearing, which is quite nice. So once that's done, you've not compressed the hi-hat because we want the dynamic range. We've EQ'd the hi-hat so we have more of the cymbal sound, more prominent. We've panned and we've sent it to a reverb. That's all you have to do when it comes to mixing a hi-hat. So there you go. I hope you liked this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. And if there's a video I haven't covered or you'd like me to, put it in the comments below and I'll see if I get to it. I'm Sonically Sound, and until next time, have fun mixing.